what is the thing that I am? What is me? Is it the electricity that occurs? Is it the synaptic connections? Is it the emotions I experience? Is it this physical construct that houses these evolutionary experiences? Or is it, as others would say, is this weird dweller in the flesh? Is it some balance between body, mind, and some sort of superstructure, like within Hinduism, within Sri Yantra and the Bindu? So it becomes really fascinating. And then I guess at the end of the day, it all depends on how you frame what reality is and what existence is. And right, is this from point A to point B and then it's done? Or is there something else that occurs after that? And is it this sort of process, a cycle of sort of moving through a spiral? Is it not? And it just is, right? Your consciousness transforms into sort of stardust and other materials, whatever it is. That conversation is not happening enough with that space, because when you create a gateway, a doorway, an opening, what the Buddhist concept would say is you create an opening for things to enter through, thought forms to come through. I don't pretend to even know if that's what's happening, or I'm not applying that that's what's happening, but I think it's a process of thought that we have to engage in, because we still don't, we're getting there, but we still don't fully know what we are.
So the mega question or thought that how I'm reacting to what you're saying is that, how new is this? So what I'm thinking about are people who, I have a group of friends or just several friends who have said to me, I love movies because I lose myself in them. And they will say, yes, and they want to lose themselves in a movie. And they watch movies over and over again, sometimes the same movie, incredible amounts of time, because they like where that movie takes them. So that's one example. There's obviously religious experience where, for millennium, people have been talking about losing themselves or becoming part of a greater whole, of a bigger whole through a religious experience. And clearly a great book can do the same thing. People read it over and over again. And music, clearly, it also has that capacity. So one question I have is kind of, how would you, or would you, in fact, distinguish this relationship with AI to the kinds of things I talked about? And then after you answer, if you're curious, I'll tell you what I wrote down.
Please, no, please. So I think, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Which is,
well, I often do. It's my habit.
Right.
she's a big old hammer.
How humans, how us as these sort of systems, I jokingly like to call us meat satellites, but these systems, right? You go all the way back to Persia, you go all the way back to Gilgamesh, you go all the way back, right? Just keep going back. You go back to the cave paintings. We've always interacted with narrative. We've always, an interesting thing about this space right now is, and this goes into some of the interesting stuff around sort of, memetics and the smallest component of culture, and right, propagation, impact, and persistence. And the speed.
All those things you said quickly, and I don't know what they mean.
Yeah, I'll come back to that.
Okay.
But essentially the speed at which fragments of narratives can be sustained and transmitted. And historically, right?
So that's like memetics. That's like how a meme travels.
Yeah. So historically, right, like that would need to either have a large marketing campaign, or that would need to get internalized by your subculture, your community group. What I think is happening now, which is super fascinating, is that there's this moment where that internalization is happening almost in real. It's like the emergence of instant messaging. If you remember back in the day when you'd be able to, like, how cool it was to go from static email to being able to talk with somebody on ICQ or some instant messenger. And particularly the one where you could see them typing on ICQ and you'd be able to respond as they were mid thought, and you'd be like, oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
And it's almost that shift, right? We've moved
yeah.
from this to this new dynamic.
Do
And
you
I
think we're
don't
doing it
What I had written
telepathically?
down before you said that, see if I can get the camera to focus. And you have to, but it's reversed. But social
Yeah.
media
yeah,
is interaction with others and narratives at scale. And I would say not
I saw
just
Star Wars.
scale meaning both quantity and speed.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
every dimension that you can scale, social media and the digital age has allowed, one of my favorite sayings is quantity has a quality all its own,
Yes.
has allowed all of this to happen in a way that, I mean, I don't see how you can argue against this, that we were not evolutionarily prepared for. There's nothing in our evolution that prepared our brains for this moment.
Well, and it's that rate of change, right? Like it's
Yes.
the exponential growth is now happening at such a way. And I was just talking with a colleague and friend this morning who's a big fan of hybrid intelligence. And this idea of human digital system, digital thought form, digital, right, AI, whatever we will call it, that your digital companion is operating as a friend and a collaborator and a co-creative agent. So think of it like SNL's writer room, right? Where you have a bunch of people and then eventually you get to a skit that's hopefully really good and it's taken all the elements of all the writers. So that's sort of the idea of sort of hybrid intelligence where you have
Got it.
two collaborators creating a better end, which doesn't take away creativity, doesn't take away any of those processes.
But depends a lot on the motivations of the AI part of the hybrid intelligence.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's where it becomes really interesting to what we were just talking about, or nation states and others, right? Like who is in control of the algorithm, who is in control of the data sets that go into the model